Today's episode of Open Container is presented by Oboz. Many of you already know Oboz, that plucky little brand from Bozeman that stood up in 2007 in a crowded footwear space and said, "There's room for me too." An upstart outlier with a weird name, roomy toe box, and well-built offerings for committed hikers. It's a combination that has attracted a loyal following for 20 years. And we're excited to partner with Oboz because they are committed to shining a light on the core activity to all our outdoor pursuits. Hiking. Hiking. The thing we all do, but no one is talking about. We are unified by hiking. Oboz loves hiking. And that's something I can get down with. Over the coming months, we'll be opening the container and getting on the trail with our friends from Bozeman. Oboz. Love hiking. Welcome to Open Container. I'm Doug Schnitzbahn. I'm a journalist, writer, and overall lover of the outdoors. I've fought wildfires, reported on national politics, published magazines, and my dirtbag credentials are in order. On this podcast, we're going to have an open conversation about culture, conservation, policy, business, issues that matter the most to the outdoor community. Let's get some. One of the reasons why the outdoor industry has been so successful as a business is, and wait for this, it's not really about making money. Of course, all business has to be about making money in the end. But what separates the outdoor industry from people just looking to make money is that these businesses are looking to solve a problem. And that is why they end up making money. Think about it. The roots of the outdoor industry as an industry were people like Yvon Chouinard and Royal Robbins who created climbing protection, not so that they could go into business, but so they could climb the routes they wanted to climb in Yosemite. Likewise, pioneers like Klaus Obermeyer created an apparel business sort of because he wanted to make a better jacket, but also because he wanted to keep the stoke of skiing alive for the rest of his long life and never have to take a real job. Follow that up with people like Larry Harrison, who lived like a beat poet, and Greg Thompson, who cut his teeth in Yosemite. They cared about creating sustainable business models and trade shows, and an industry was born where before there had just been a niche of sporting equipment. So this is the way we would have it. Those of us who have tried to stay in the outdoor industry for a long time simply want to keep being dirtbags. And there's a way to do that and continue to be a functioning member of society, as well as respond to the needs we see out in the wild. Think about some of the best products we have in the outdoor industry right now. Rockert skis, famously championed by Shane McConkey because the man knew what would ski powder best. Clipless bike pedals, Gore-Tex fabric, which it turns out was an accidental discovery, the soft shell, and the Camelback. This one in particular, I think, shows some really great innovation because it was created by Michael Eidson, who was an EMT racing the Hotter than Hell 100 in Texas in the 1980s. He knew hydration was important, and he didn't like water bottles, so he created the first hydration pack using an IV bag and a tube sock. Turns out it's one of the best-known companies and products in the outdoor industry today. Now, you really see a difference when you look at companies and other industries that are simply there to make money when they create a product. They are trying to tell consumers how to think or how they should buy instead of answering a consumer need. Now, this isn't some outdoor industry secret. It's really a key to economics and business in general. Fulfill the need. This goes back to the old story that the people who made the most money in the mining camps in Alaska during the gold rush were not the miners looking for a lucky strike, but those who were selling them picks and shovels. But I think it also speaks to the unique ethics of people in the outdoor industry. Since you're not going into the business simply to sell shit, you are more aware of your responsibilities to the planet, to the workforce. You try to create products that do less harm, a really great motto that all businesses should follow because these brands have a lot of success. Okay, part 2 of this mini academic rundown about your industry. The other reason why the outdoor industry is so different from so many other jobs is it attracts people who don't really want a job. Most of all, we want to be playing outside. This is our first priority in life, and if we can find a way to work and do that, that's a perfect balance. Unfortunately, balance is hard to attain. I know this happens for me. I started work at a seasonal job for the Forest Service that changed my life, saved my life in many ways. And at that point, I knew that going back to the mainstream workforce was just not going to be possible for me. So I found a way to continue to be a ski bum and have a career. I started writing about the outdoors, writing about skiing and hiking, eventually becoming a magazine editor and now a publisher. That way, I could always be involved in this world that meant so much to me. And I know that there are countless people in the outdoor industry, from guides to CEOs to podcasters, who feel the same way. There's only one problem when you go down this road. Business is not easy. Making a living is not easy. So you have to hustle. You have to do a lot of the work yourself, and you have to somehow do the work so that you can find time to be outside as well. But I think the outdoor industry and the chance to be an entrepreneur in this space attracts people who enjoy the hustle. After all, it's what we do outdoors. It's the concentration you need being so close to having it all fall apart, to failure in places like riding the last section of Porcupine Rim on a mountain bike, or skiing Baldy at Alta, or on a run-out climb. There's a freedom to being a hustler in the business world, just like there's a freedom to pushing the limits in the outdoor world. My guest today is a hustler who has found the secret to outdoor business, fulfilling a need that has been ignored. Hailing from the Appalachian Mountains of Western Maryland, Georgia Grace Edwards, Gigi, is the CEO and co-founder of Gnara, a venture capital-backed startup whose mission is to help everyone answer nature's call, quite literally. Gigi got the idea for the GoFly, Gnara's internationally patented zipper technology, while working as a glacier guide in Alaska. She and eventually a small team set out to make the outdoors more accessible through innovative and inclusive design. Prototyped from her Middlebury College dorm room, the GoFly can now be found in Gnara apparel online and soon as an ingredient in other brands on the floors of the largest retailers in North America. So let's open the container with Gigi Edwards. Hey, I am so excited to be talking to Georgia Grace Edwards today, who goes by Gigi. And Georgia Grace Edwards, Gigi, is the CEO and co-founder of Gnara, which is a venture capital-based, Colorado-based startup whose mission is to help everyone answer nature's call, quite literally. And Gigi, I think I'll let you explain that a little bit as we go along. But I wanted to welcome you to the show. I'm really glad to see you here.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you. I'm super happy to be here.
And maybe we should break into that right away first. Why would you be helping everyone answer nature's call?
We patented a zipper technology called the GoFly that allows everyone to literally go on the go without exposing skin to the elements or other people or removing safety gear or taking off the top half of a garment or anything like that at work and at play.
Which is the kind of thing that you wonder, why did no one do that before?
Definitely. I think that's the most common response I get is, I can't believe you're the first person to think of this. And my reaction is always like, there's no way I'm the first person to think of this. I think most women from the dawn of pants until now have thought about this functionality in some capacity. And in fact, we hear from customers all the time that they've been doing DIY versions of this for decades before we came along.
Oh, that's great. Well, and I know as a young entrepreneur, as a growing brand, there's a lot of work to do. And before you came on here, we were talking about how draining the hustle is and how hard it is to be trying to make it outside of the usual careers and life, especially in the outdoor world. So I guess my first question for you is, how do you do it? How do you survive the hustle?
That's a great question that I don't know that I have an answer for, besides I take it day by day. I remember when we were first starting out, I forget which startup book it is, but it says that all great teams have a hipster, a hacker, and a hustler. And for better or for worse, I have always been in the hustler part of that position. So yeah, I don't know how we keep doing that other than you keep doing it.
Well, what kind of, what's a day look like for you? How do you make it through a day? Are you a planner? Do you go by the seat of your pants? Do you kind of do all the above?
I definitely mentally prepare for things. Though what I've found over the years is that no matter how much you prepare, it's going to be unexpected in some capacity. And sometimes being able to not go in with the set plan and react on the fly, pun kind of intended, is the way to go. I always definitely err on the side of taking in all the information and processing before I respond. That's kind of my preferred place to be, but that's not always possible in day to day. Right now, we're a team of 3 full-time employees handling 3 different revenue streams, which is essentially 3 different businesses. So I am all over the place, from website edits and weighing in on marketing to pitching wholesalers to working on our partnership deals for GoFly, to the admin side of things, the operational side of things with 3PLs and factory and sourcing, every element of a business. It's not unlikely that I touch it in a day.
Yeah, that is definitely a hustle. Makes mine sound easy.
Yeah. I try to chunk where I can for sure, but I kind of think signing up to be a founder means signing up to be pulled in a million different directions and multitasking constantly.
And how do you deal with it mentally and emotionally, having so much responsibility and pulled in so many directions?
Besides therapy, having a strong support network of people who have been here since the earliest days and have seen this when it was nothing more than a crazy idea in college and a project I was working on for a class, to where we are now, has been really helpful when I'm super in the weeds working in the business, to be able to have that perspective of zooming out and see the bigger picture. And getting that kind of external validation is something that definitely helps me stay on track and not get too consumed in distractions or, I don't know, other things on the side, and focus on what our main priorities are in solving for this mission.
That's great. Glad to see that you can find a way to make it through all the work you're doing. I guess the next question I have for you, though, is, you're an entrepreneur, and I think it's kind of a loaded word in our society right now. Some people think of entrepreneurs as, not not the outdoor people they want to be hanging out with. But can anyone become an entrepreneur? What does it actually mean to be an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I think anyone can be an entrepreneur. I think, especially if you're someone who you either your passion or your pissed offness outweighs the sacrifices, then I think you're an entrepreneur in pursuing something. Anyone who's turning an idea into something tangible that resonates with other people and therefore has value is an entrepreneur. And I think the definition of that should include artists and writers and musicians and anyone who's taking something from thoughts and turning it into something tangible. I think sometimes people in those professions shy away from the term entrepreneur or founder, and prefer small business owner or creative or whatever it is, which is valid. But I think they're all synonymous, and it's really just semantics, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point to think about that. That that artists and musicians, you see people on Patreon or whatever. I think in this business climate and society, right, you have to, if you want to work outside of the mainstream, and if you don't want to have a boss, then you have to find some way to make it work for yourself, right?
Definitely. If there were a way to do this with the boss, I also would have opted for that. But the only way to solve this problem seemed to be to do it myself. So here we are.
But doesn't it feel good to be your own boss, to not have someone else calling the shots? Or
Sometimes, for sure. But other times, I think startups and founders are just as, if not more, beholden to the same pressures of capitalism, but they're having to
sure.
execute on all of it under resourced. Um, and it's a lot of responsibility to like be responsible for other people's livelihoods and reputations, and a lot of things that you don't have to worry about if you're a nice cog in the wheel, which I've also been in the past too, and that has its pros and cons as well.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Well, why don't we go ahead then to, could you tell me, what Gnara means, the name of the business, and why you chose that name for what you're doing right now?
Yes. So if there are any OG fans listening, they knew us as SheFly. And that was a
Yes.
name that we came up with in college. We wanted a 2-syllable word that indicated the product and the intended audience and had some fun kind of innuendos or double meanings we could make with it. The problem quickly became that we were known as She Flies by SheFly featuring SheFly. So there was no differentiation between the product, the company, and the technology, and all of those needed their own room to scale. And then as we became leaders in the industry in accessibility and inclusion, it didn't make sense socially to keep using a she pronoun if not all consumers of our product used that necessarily. It was kind of unnecessarily excluding people who we could be converting. And when it came to discussion of licensing partners, which we knew was ultimately where we wanted to take the GoFly technology, initial interested potential licensees were like, how are we going to do, for example, men's fishing waders featuring SheFly technology on the marketing side? It just created unnecessary barriers. And so one of our mentors, Sean, helped us with a rebrand. And Gnara comes from the Latin root word naris, which means to get to know or to become familiar with. And so we took this problem that at least half the population is highly familiar with and solved for it. And we liked Naris because Naris, which we turned into Gnara, still having a feminine slant and a kind of redefinition to some degree. We liked it because it was a blank slate, so it didn't have any associations or connotations already. We could kind of make it our own. And then on the practical side of a rebrand, it was good for securing trademarks and patents and URLs and social handles since no one had it, since it was made up. And then no matter where we go with this, it's applicable in a lot of industries, not just the outdoor industry. We wanted to still have a nod to the roots and to where we started. So thinking about shred the gnar and adding an to it. So still a nod that's still kind of redefining a culture as we think we knew it in the past.
Well, I think it's a brilliant name, and I really love what you all did by taking, this one. You came in so hot with such success with SheFly, and this one idea, and it's really amazing to see you then find a way to expand. I mean, really, the idea of inclusivity, right? That your brand is for anyone. That it's not just one gimmick. That it's a bigger thing than that.
Yeah, and it's technically unisex technology. Our focus just happens to be the half of the population that hasn't had any solution, at least to number one, leading up to this. And that decision was something, I think that was one of the first times where I really had to stick to my gut, because there were several parties who warned us that we should not do a rebrand. And I still think it was one of the best decisions we've ever made. And the licensing deals and partnerships we have now, definitely prove that.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love the way it's, as I said, it's really expanded who you speak to, right? With this idea that started small. And on that note, I mean, what was the genesis of the brand? How did everything start?
And one more ad there, another thing I forgot to mention is that it was getting confused with FUDs, female urination devices, because there's the Go Girl and the Shiwi. And so this was a similar Chick-fil-A, similar naming convention, that we definitely wanted to differentiate ourselves from. In terms of the story, Gnara, which was SheFly at the time, was born from a summer I spent working as a glacier guide in Alaska. So I was spending 8 to 12 hours a day up on the ice, usually as one of the only female guides, if not the only one. And in comparison to the guys who could turn around, unzip, go whenever, wherever, right, I found myself having to trek across the glacier, carefully avoiding crevasses, completely remove 3 to 4 layers in freezing temperatures, do my thing, put it all back on, and hike back to work. And that process was such a waste of time and energy that left me feeling cold for hours after. And it got to the point where my best solution was they call it tactical dehydration, which basically just meant not drinking water for 12 hours.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I got to the point where I was like, my entire role here is to ensure other people's safety as a guide on this glacier. And I am limiting my physical performance and ability to do that, from a health standpoint and multiple other standpoints. That can't be a solution. And then kind of went on this deep dive of the history of women's pants, or the lack thereof, and realized it's a super young industry that has not seen a lot of innovation at all. And that kind of made it ripe for shaking up with a technology like this.
And then how was the actual first product born and how did it come to market?
So I sat on that idea for about 2 years. At the time, I didn't realize how much I was thinking about it, but friends from college have since come back to me and been like, it was literally all you talked about. Like, all you talked about was a better way to pee out of your pants.
For good reason. For good
Yeah,
reason, right?
for a good reason. I was like the pee pants girl. My senior year of college, my senior spring, I took a class called Middlebury Entrepreneurs. I went to Middlebury College in Vermont, and that was a 4-week class where you entered with rough prototypes of whatever your idea was, and you exited 4 weeks later with a business model and your first pitch competition under your belt, which we won, and it was $250. And I took that to a local seamstress in Vermont, and she helped us refine the design. The rough prototypes that I entered that class with, I'd sewn over Christmas break with my best childhood friend in her attic, and I had not sewn since 7th grade home economics class. I grew up in Appalachia, so there was some sewing for girls at that time. But I feel like we mainly sewed like pieces of paper and weird things like that for straight lines. So limited knowledge, but got a bunch of pants from the Goodwill and then a bunch of different open close mechanisms from Joann Fabrics that we had locally, like snaps and Velcro and all sorts of different buttons, and ultimately landed on the zipper. So those prototypes were all functional, but they looked absolutely horrendous. It's a miracle that anyone took us seriously at that point in time. And so the seamstress was able to refine that in a way that was much more discreet aesthetically. So you can't even tell the GoFly's there. And that was enough to take to our first factory in a tech pack. And we crowdfunded for our first product, the Go There pant, in spring of 2019. So we started production Q4 of that year. And so production was from Q4 into Q1 of 2020. We all know what happened then. We were at a fair trade zero waste factory in India, and 2/3 of our product was completed before the factory went out of business overnight. But the remaining 1/3 was nothing came of it. I just don't know where it is. But it wasn't considered an essential good, so it couldn't leave the country, which I will also argue till the end of time that it very much was an essential good. And so 1/3 of our initial wait list of initial customers, I think it was 500 on that, 500 customers who backed that first crowdfunding campaign on iFund Women, ended up waiting over 2 years to actually get the first official production run of Go There pants, which ended up being 12 times the size of that initial run, with some accelerators and lots of pitching in between.
And then how did you make the next leap that you've made now? How did you make that leap from kind of, very specific one product to a much larger, all-encompassing brand?
Customers have always been at the forefront of this company. We're pretty obsessed with feedback and what they want to see, and do a lot of polling and surveying. And so we have enough products to take us through probably 2030 of just customer demanded products. And so we ranked all of them in terms of what people wanted to see next. The first prototypes that I ever made with what became the GoFly were actually in ski and snow pants, which makes our current partnership with Burton really exciting to kind of bring it full circle. But throughout that prototyping process individually, we quickly realized that outerwear was going to be extremely expensive to manufacture. And for a first product, we were going to be super limited in terms of the season we can sell it in. And at the time, women's participation within snow sports was also much lower than it is now. So instead, we opted for the Go There pant that's kind of a do-it-all pant. A lot of people use it for backpacking and camping and rock climbing and van lifing and sailing and anything imaginable. And the other problem we ran into with that initial prototype was that if we made outerwear, we were going to have to make base layers that were also compatible. And we were completely bootstrapped at this time, so we only had enough capital to do one production run of something. So that's kind of why we veered towards the pant. And then from there, we expanded to the Go There short. And then we expanded to our first partnership with Libsyn on the Eco Trek overalls that have the Go Fly zipper. Then we launched our Go Free collection, which is leggings and a 6-inch short. And now we have the Go Fly in the ski bibs and a compatible base layer that features flaps with Burton. So that's kind of our line to date.
Yeah, and this is a great success story, right? You're currently, right now, even still taking pre-orders on these Burton and Gnara ski bibs and compatible base layers, right? Which was kind of the missing link. And how did you get a chance to partner with a billion-dollar company? And how is that common? Is that something we see a lot in the industry? Or
I have not seen any examples of this. I am curious if any exist. I feel like, especially having been in the industry now for, I just passed 3 years full time with Gnara, and there's a ton of small and emerging brands who are constantly doing giveaways together and appearing in the same gear lists and are in the same Slack groups. And then it seems like there's everyone at the top, the Patagonias, the North Face, the Arc'teryxes, the Burtons. And there's very few companies in that middle ground. And I don't see a lot of threads of connection between the top and the bottom. It's kind of like everyone operates within their tier. So for us, this is a huge deal to be able to bridge that gap with a technology that is applicable no matter what the size of your company is or what the product is that you're making, and to have it legitimized on that scale, to have a Burton logo next to a Gnara logo is a really big deal for us, especially given how taboo this issue has been historically and how many people have kind of laughed it off. I think no matter what happens, the fact that a $1 billion company was like, oh, okay, this crazy idea you had and proved out, we're going to give this a try and see what happens. That's a big win for startups, and something that I hope this industry will encourage more of, especially because the outdoor industry is known for being super traditional and not very innovative and more of the same old, same old. This is a really great way to break out of that mold. And in terms of approaching it, it honestly, I mean, in some ways it's very different from approaching with a company that's closer to our size, like Libsyn. But at the end of the day, all of it is just conversations and winning people over one-on-one first before a full company is won over, for example. I think we've learned a lot about who the relevant person to contact at a different business is. Sometimes it is the product team, especially if it's someone at Burton, for example, where they have an R&D department. They're incentivized to work on new innovations. At other companies that don't have that same incentivization structure, it could be kind of insulting to approach a product designer and be like, look, you could have made this better. At other companies, it's really the marketing team that latches on, because this is absolutely a story worth telling and a story that people are really excited to finally talk about. And then at other companies, I think it starts at the top. It all depends on kind of what their hierarchy is. And what their processes are. It's kind of like building something from scratch each time with a different team each time. So in theory, this will become more scalable over time, the more experience we get and the more case studies we have under our belts. But yeah, only 2 on the market right now. So still, and we're not fully launched yet. So there's still a lot of learnings that will come in the coming months.
Well, and what I love about you partnering with Burton is, even though it's such a huge company now, I mean, when they started, I think they were cultural innovators, right? It was bringing in a new kind of culture. And that's what I love about what you're doing too, is not only, the best innovation in the outdoor industry is the stuff that serves a need, right? And you were out there on the glacier, you had a need and you answered it. But I think that also opened the door to cultural innovation, where a whole 50% of the population was being ignored, right? And likewise, I think Burton snowboarding was a cultural innovation as well, bringing new people into skiing who are on the mountain who wouldn't have been there before.
Absolutely. Like fundamentally changing the way that people are experiencing and thinking about topics in the outdoors and beyond. A lot more questioning. Like I think at Burton, it was like, okay, if we're doing this on 2 skis, why not do it on 1 board? And both companies have this kind of scrappy start in Vermont. us in a college dorm room, Jake in a
That's right.
barn
Yeah.
in the middle of
Yes.
nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think historically, Burton has been a company that does embrace a lot of innovation, whether it's the BOA dials on their snowboarding boots or Gore-Tex or their new like step-on bindings. They've always been industry leaders in testing out innovations first and really pushing for them to exist. So there's a lot of alignment in that sense.
Yeah, and I mean, you went to Middlebury, going back to Vermont, which definitely, I feel that there are two colleges that you see a lot of people from in the outdoor industry. One on kind of the upper end, maybe, is Middlebury, and the other one where there's tons of people from is St. Lawrence University. I think between those two schools, we see a lot of people working in the outdoors. I'm not exactly sure why, but they seem to be brewing grounds.
Oh, that's funny. I've never thought about that, but there were so many weekend parties where it was mid kids at St. Lawrence and vice versa.
Yes.
Um, so maybe there's something in that. I'm not sure. It's funny too, because as liberal arts colleges, neither of those are teaching hard business schools or outdoor industry specific things. I think they're just set in places where the outdoors are so naturally a part of your life. That maybe those things become more obvious. I'm not exactly sure. And Middlebury's investment in social entrepreneurship is absolutely why
Right.
I pursued this more than just thinking about it all the time and being disgruntled.
That's great. Well, hey, when we were kind of planning for this interview, you told me that there are two essential questions everyone should be asking right now. The first is, why is that? And the second is, how could it be better? And what exactly do you mean by that? Is that in business? Is that in life? What are those questions about?
I think both. In the context of Gnara, those are the two questions I asked when thinking about why there wasn't another solution to solve for this problem. And when I started doing research and realized facts like, oh, 56% of women have had a bathroom accident outside in the past year, which also was self reported. So probably it's a lot higher than that. That's crazy that more than one out of every two women is peeing her pants. Like in 2025? Are you joking? And when you pair that with the historical significance of laws like the fact that women couldn't wear pants on the floor of the US Senate until 1993, I think it's really important to have the historical piece of why something is and how it came to exist instead of just like railing against the present. It's really important to understand how it came to be. And I think in the outdoor industry specifically, if people aren't trying to understand that historical context and simultaneously leave something better than they found it, I'm not really sure what we're doing here. I feel like that's the entire point of the outdoors is pushing forward and having progress, recognizing the patterns that led to where we are in outdoor industry issues, and then seeing what we can do to leave them better than we found it. In the current, shall we say, turmoil of the outdoor industry, I think those are two important questions that are kind of being forgotten a little bit.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say I love the idea of a senator wearing a pair of Gnara pants, especially during session. I think that would be an incredible statement all around that we need right now. On the other point that you said, though, I do think the outdoor industry is in a really strange place right now. A lot of anxiety. No one's really sure where anything's going. Um, where do you think we're headed? What bomb do you think there is for the outdoor industry, and what path do you think we should follow?
I will admit that the episodes focused on outdoor trends and forecasting, I tend to skip because no sane person would look at that data and then think, oh, yes, I should definitely continue doing this. So, just as a personal protection measure, I try to stay away from the more negative signaling because I think to some degree there are pieces that have always been there. And sometimes when we over talk about it, I think we manifest it in some way. I will say that in the current situations, when I hear about what I call the big boys struggling, a natural reaction is to be like, if organizations that are that well resourced, that have been around for this many decades, can't figure out how to overcome this. How the hell am I going to overcome it? And so that thought is always there. But I think the flip side of that is that being a more nimble, smaller, more innovative company and doing something that hasn't been done before on this scale and trying a new blueprint might give us a chance. And so that's kind of what I try to remember. I also think that for us, the most honest take, or I guess the best way to get a pulse on the state of the world for us has not been unemployment rates or inflation, or whatever headlines or Gini coefficients. It's been the state of our customer service inbox. And while that has always been overwhelmingly positive, just flooded with testimonials and messages and asking if we can do this product next, there are points in time where we see an influx of certain types of messages. Like if more than a few people mention something, that's how we kind of pick up on what actual trends are happening day to day with real people. And so recently, I think the tone of so many messages in our inbox is just like how much people are struggling right now and how much they feel alone and not listened to. And I think that is something that I am constantly reminding our team of. While it's very sometimes frustrating to have to respond to messages about, people who missed a exchange window or made a purchase and however many days later went back to their finances and decided that, they actually can't make this investment anymore. Investment meaning a purchase of a product. Like those are kind of unprecedented. And I'd say we've had an influx of those recently. And so what I constantly tell our team is it is an honor to be a listening ear for all of these grievances. Granted, none of those things are problems we claim to solve. We've been very clear about the problem we set out to solve. But it's because we listen to people and solve that problem that they feel like we're a safe space to listen to other concerns, even ones that have nothing to do with us or the reliability of DHL in the current economy, which is quite low, I would say. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking a lot about right now and seeing a lot of firsthand.
You're listening to Rock Fight Radio. Oh, you got DJ CT back with you spinning the hits, and it's that time because we have another new song from that hit machine, Fitz. And Fitz wants to ask you, why just settle for a smart sock when you can opt for a smarter sock?
You've got a million choices lying on the floor. Thin ones, thick ones, even some you never wore. But there's a sock whose specs rise above the rest. Don't settle for a smart one when the smarter sock is best. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. Fitz is the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the answer to the question of the knit. Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the goal. It's only common sense with 4 different patents. The difference is immense. The Y line's added volume really is legit to the next level comfort of the fit we call Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. Fitz is the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the answer to the question of the knit. Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz. The smarter sock. Fitz. Fitz is the smarter sock. Fitz. Whole foot comfort is the answer to the question of the knit. Fitz. Opt for the smarter sock. Fitz.
And now, back to the show.
Well, I think too that, I don't know if you would say this, but I think you should be who the bigger brands are looking to right now, right? Because you're the brand of the future. You, Libsyn, who you mentioned before. So what do you think those brands could learn from you in your perspective, both in business and understanding the culture?
I think 2 things. One, this functionality is absolutely needed. Of course, we can continue proving this on an even larger scale, but we're at 30,000 units in the world. We're at multiple partnerships launched to the public. This is absolutely something people want to see. And so from a business standpoint, if you know there's a way to improve your product and you're not trying to do that, I definitely have some questions about like, why wouldn't you be trying to make this better? And partnering with us, like all of our partnerships are structured in a way where we make it easier to partner with us than we do to compete with us, for example. That's number one. Number two is that even if you're not bought on from, let's call it, the social reasoning and the stats about women's participation in the outdoor industry, from a business standpoint, you should absolutely be investing in this. And partnering with Gnara is a really easy way to not just have the functionality and show that you're focused on innovation and problem solving, but to also signal that you care about supporting underrepresented groups in the outdoors. With Libsyn in particular, it was also very strategic because they didn't have a women's audience at all before working with us. They were like 95% male. And so Gnara bringing the entire weight of our following, which the Rock Fight has pointed out how strong that is and kind of outsized on socials. And having immediate customers who are already so familiar with the technology and also so hungry for it in additional applications just makes a lot of sense. And I think when at this time, when the industry is struggling, a lot of times when that happens, people become risk averse and they go back to the same old, which doesn't really make sense because the same old is what got you to this place. And so I think if you're going to struggle anyway, why not struggle for something worth trying for, which in my opinion is always functional apparel and always meeting customers exactly where they are and giving them what they're asking for.
Well, and I think, isn't it true that the whole outdoor space is changing too? And I think a lot of brands miss that. And that's right what you're in the heart of, right? How do you see, what we even define as outdoors being different now than even the image that maybe some of these bigger brands project or want to think is out there?
I think the brand persona of like, we only do hardcore shit, like all our entire feed is ice climbing and summiting Everest, all super admirable things to do in the outdoors. That is not what the outdoor industry is anymore. Americans' participation in outdoor rec in so many ways that are completely unrelated to the most extreme scenarios has been booming since COVID. So creating, I think, trends of products that don't distinctly have to live in the hard outdoor category, but can also be used as lifestyle pieces, can also be used in maybe less intense outdoor applications, whether that's fly fishing or picnicking or car camping. People, I think, are wanting less shit and more good shit that can be used for a lot of different use cases. And that's how our Go There pants, like a woman has literally set a world record wearing our stuff. First woman to sail the world solo, Cole Brower. And also people wear our pants for like, a little mental health walk. Like the range of use cases for these products is quite broad. And I don't think that's a trend that's going to go away.
And I think this is really important right now, right? When the outdoors itself is kind of under fire, where public lands are in the threat of being sold and parks are losing staff. But I think it seems really important to talk to people and tell them that outdoors can be a little park nearby, a little piece of woods that's left over, right? I mean, you've lived in the Northeast where there's more places like that. So how are you speaking to that growing demographic or understanding of what the outdoors is?
I think a lot of it is just amplifying the stories that we receive from our customers who are using our products to garden or to dog walk or to go to a music festival. Those are all legit ways to be outside. And I think producing content or amplifying existing content that allows people to see themselves resonated within it, they can relate to it, is really important. And so while we do have people achieving quote unquote hardcore things in our products, we also dedicate probably more of our feed to more everyday applications and real people to just emphasize how accessible this really is, especially with this technology.
Yeah, well, let's talk about, your kind of how you get your message out there, right? Social media, I know, is really important to you and really important to small brands. And I think it's interesting right now where people are kind of wavering between needing it and being tired of it, right? How do you navigate that landscape? How do you speak on social media in a way that is important right now?
It sounds really simple, but we try to speak on social media in a way that's exactly what we want to hear. So I am so over influencers, sales
Yes.
gimmicks,
Yes.
my life is perfect, trending
Yes.
audio. And we really try to focus on transparency because that has always been the key to our growth. Like, we didn't have product for 2 years, and all we did on socials was talk about all the reasons we didn't have product for 2 years and really bring customers into that journey. And so out of, I don't know how, I think maybe like 150 customers, we maybe processed 3 refunds over 2 years. Like, that's a level of loyalty that's unheard of. And we fully attribute to the level of transparency and the behind the scenes that we really showed other people. We're absolutely a founder forward brand. That's why I'm here doing things like this. But there are a lot of times where I get pressure to be more of a influencer personality. There are so many brands that start with someone who has a million personal followers, and then it's super easy to launch a business because you already have an audience of 1 million. I think for me, that just doesn't feel authentic. I want to exist still as a separate person to some degree. But I will say that for our paid ad strategy, the ones of me packing orders in the warehouse always perform better. But I think that kind of reinforces it's me actually doing the work and actually showing you how we got there. So yeah, maybe some disjointed thoughts on that, but I think just showing up in the way that I want to consume content has been our guiding principle so far. And then another obvious principle for us is having a sense of humor and having the ability to laugh at ourselves and also laugh at the ridiculous things that are said to us is pretty essential to making people feel comfortable and joining the conversation, and also just continuing on. I think if you don't have a sense of humor, you're doomed.
So what's an example of that? What's a ridiculous? Obviously, internet comments could be more than ridiculous, right? So,
oof, there are so many that I don't even know that I want to give them amplification.
Right, of course.
I think look at any of our viral reels and there's some really great examples.
And you just let that come on? I mean, is that the kind of, all PR is good PR, right? Or is that, does that mean you're succeeding, do you think, if people are criticizing you or being disrespectful even?
Mixed to some degree, yes. If someone thinks it's worth leaving an outrageous comment or worth coming after you in some way, that means it's because they see you as a threat, or like something about what you're doing is bothering them enough and on their radar enough to react to it. So we do try to always take it as a compliment first. I will say that there are limits to that. We don't tolerate hate speech or any other crazy things as a brand, so ridiculous comments get removed, but we also leave the bulk of them on there to show, like, when people are like, I can't believe this hasn't existed before. It's like, well, here's how it exists now, and look at the shit that we hear, honestly, which is the minority by far, minority of things that we hear. But of course, that's also what you remember most because it sticks out. So I think that's part of our mission of transparency, is being like, this is what it really looks like to do this at this time, and here's how we're overcoming it.
Yeah, and I think that, as much as social media can be really toxic and difficult at this time, it's also a chance for underrepresented groups and voices to have a voice, right? And maybe that's why you do get so much flack at times, right? In a way, in a male and big company dominated world beforehand, you couldn't have that kind of voice, right? And get out there.
Yes, and I think it is both that has allowed us to both be successful in speaking directly to customers and to scale at this level. One of my early mentors was Carolyn Cook of Isis Apparel in Vermont, and she, unfortunate name now, but she had a very similar functionality. And I didn't know that until she was kind of assigned as my mentor in the class that I took. And I was like, oh, well, if you've already done this, then like maybe I shouldn't bother trying. What do you think went wrong? And her response was that she thought she was just way too far ahead of her time. She was creating a product for women that she could, the internet didn't exist. E-commerce was not a thing at this point in time. So she was trying to sell directly into male-owned gear stores that only had male customers walking in. And that is so many layers of literal middlemen and barriers that I think we've been really lucky in that we've been able to approach this at a time where we can talk directly to customers and we can ride on the coattails of so many social movements and specific products that have paved the way to improve women's discomfort in the outdoors and otherwise, and to make women specific products a priority, which has never really been the case prior.
You know, one of the things I really love about where you're headed with the brand is building it into an inclusive brand in a much broader way than just a zipper that works well for people with lady parts, right? And how do you see that bigger vision really growing and teaching people what inclusivity can be?
I think first and foremost, it's recognizing that more times than not, when we make something better for one specific population, it almost always improves the experience for the entire population. And I think a lot of adaptive applications are pretty indicative of that. And many of them have become more normalized and been put into more mainstream products. In terms of our overall vision, we think about a world where everyone can venture outside without having to think twice about this problem. Like pit stops and dehydrating yourself and all of these things are taking up a ton of brain space that does not need to happen at all. And so the way to do that is to make this technology the norm instead of the exception. So we're starting with the outdoor industry and we've started with these specific products. But in reality, any product that is attached to the legs of a wearer is a place where you could put a GoFly zipper. So pretty close to endless opportunities on that one. And so I think continuing to prove it out in additional applications will only help us get there and making this, it's only not a norm until it is, basically, is the strategy.
Yeah. I mean, what is inclusivity, right? People seem so, obviously there are a group of people who are horrified and so scared by this term that they have to, reject it. But why, what would you tell someone who is afraid of inclusivity?
I would say take all the buzzwords out of it. Like DEI is so under attack right now. Like ignore whatever nomenclature you want to assign to it and think about what it actually means. And what it actually means is so simple, which is just making things that work for people. And that is at its core something that all of us are striving to do. And I think getting caught up in the politics of it, for lack of a better phrase, is creating like all this unnecessary I think chatter about it, when at its core, everyone's just trying to improve things. And that is a universal standard. That's not a niche thing.
So, I mean, times are crazy right now, and you are a mountain guide, accomplished in the outdoors. What are you doing right now outdoors to find mental health? What are you doing to enjoy? What are you able to do beyond the business, if anything, right now?
Unfortunately, there is quite a lot of bleed over between business and personal. I mean, for better or for worse. Sometimes for worse, though, definitively. And so a lot of what I'm doing is just continued product testing outside. So having the base layers and bibs and taking them backcountry skiing and skiing at the resort. Also doing a lot of cross-country skiing. And then a lot of walks when I need to process things. And that's about it until the seasons change. But that's mainly what I'm currently up to.
So is it all business, or do you get some times out there where you really feel a larger connection to things that go beyond the hustle, all that you're doing?
I try to build in outside time where I am not focused on the pressure of like forgetting to get content while I'm out there using the product. It's not always possible, but there are times when I can disconnect. And it's usually when I remind myself of like why we started this in the first place. And so if I'm not also giving myself access to the reason that we started this, then I'm not fully solving the problem. So besides mental reminders, there's not much I can do on that front.
You're working hard. You're working hard. Yeah.
And even though it is, there are times where it's a lot of working. It's like I was standing at the top of a run a couple of days ago at the resort, and a friend skied by and was like, "Oh my God, are those the bibs? Like, show me the functionality." So that was a personal moment that became a work moment, but the joy on her face and seeing it in real life and like immediately placing an order also brings me personal joy as much as it brings further success to the company. So they are intertwined to a large degree.
That's great. Have you seen them in the wild just unsolicited? Have you happened to, see your product out there? Does that give you a big thrill? Yeah.
Not the bibs since they're pre-order, so they'll deliver ahead of next ski season. But our other products, yes, absolutely. It is so exciting when we spot them in the wild. And I always go up to the person and ask how they found out about it. And sometimes I'm honest about who I am, and other times I'm like, "Oh no, I'm just a fan. I want to know how you heard about." So that's fun too. And then it also helps when there are certain retailers, for example, who have said no, no, no. But then when I look at our Pro Deal account and see how many employees from that retailer are wearing our product, or when I show up at an event and employees of that retailer are wearing our product to an outdoor event, it helps give some form of validation, even if I know we're not going to get it from the top, so to speak.
That is beautiful. I love that. I think that's a sure sign of success. And you told me at the very beginning of this talk that, community was really important to help you get through. You live in a great outdoor community, right? How do you get buoyed by the people around you?
I hear a lot of social communities are based around an activity. So I'm in we call it a biking baddies, and it's a women's mountain bike group. And I have a similar thing for skiing and a similar thing for dance, for example.
Wow.
So it's nice that a lot of my social communities are based on outdoor movement of some kind, and not in a competitive way, in a way that's entirely focused around just showing up and being together. And that is something that I very much value and cherish, and know there are certainly variations of that in cities. Like running clubs are super strong in cities, and that was something I loved having when I lived in Boston, for example. But I think the kind of variety and volume of the community groups I can be a part of here is super special, and not something that I take for granted.
That's beautiful. I guess, unfortunately we're running out of time now, so I'm going to bring you up to, and it's been so great to talk to you. I think we're going to have to do this again sometime. The last question we always ask everyone on this show is, what gives you hope?
I know you asked this on other episodes, but for some reason I was like, maybe I won't have to answer that one at this slightly less hopeful time. This is going to sound not hopeful, and then I'm going to bring it full circle.
Okay.
Gnara lost a member of our team, Sarah Steinwand, who was also the founder of Treeline PR, in an avalanche a couple weeks ago. And she was the main person in charge of the PR launch with Burton, the limited edition drop. And she was also just a really close friend of mine. We were friends for years in the women's mountain bike group, for example, before we ever worked together. And so the personal grief on top of the professional grief and challenges has been really, really difficult. But her celebration of life service was a couple days ago, and someone who is another person in the industry, actually, Lisa Slagle of Wheelie Creative, was talking about their relationship. And the main theme of her talk and how Sarah made everyone feel is that she, pardon my language, showed the fuck up. And I think that is what is giving me a lot of hope right now, is remembering that even in times of extreme turmoil, there will always be people who show the fuck up, and you just have to find them and show the fuck up with them. And that's kind of what we're all about. So I'm holding on to that.
I love that. I love that you are showing the fuck up. I'm going to show the fuck up. And I think we should get as many people as possible to show the fuck up. And
I love it.
that's beautiful to talk about Sarah, too, who I knew for a long time. And we honored on a previous episode of the show. I'm glad we got some mention of her in here as well.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, Gigi, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. For people who want to pre-order the bibs and the base layers as well, is that possible for them to do right now? How would they do that?
It's possible and much appreciated because it sets the entire tone for future partnerships like this and continuing current ones. You can do it right on our homepage. It's right there front and center at Gnara.com. It's also linked in all of our social bios, which are just at Gnara_apparel. And if you are on our email list, you've already gotten a bajillion blasts about it. So thank you.
And who would you love to listen into this show and order something from Gnara?
Like an individual?
No, just in general. What kind of customer would you love to bring in?
Oh, anyone. I'm so excited for whenever we hear a story that is not a use case I have personally experienced. I'm always like, wow, that's incredible. I didn't even think about how we could help in that scenario. So if you have some outdoor activity or, I don't know, thing you're training for that isn't something you've seen us show on socials, like we want to hear about it. We want to see you do your cool activity in our product and see how it improves it. Yeah, no constraints on that one.
Great. And how finally do you think the best way to show the fuck up is?
There are so many ways to show the fuck up. I think pre-ordering continues to be a really important one, given where we are right now as a business. Social engagement, there are things that feel meaningless on social media that actually make a huge difference in terms of the eyes that your content reaches. So all of that is always appreciated. And I think you asked me about the hats that I wear. Another hat that I wear is fundraising. And I think that especially right now when we don't know what's going on with the economy, or we do, but we're going to pretend we don't, funding underrepresented entities of any kind in any form is a really tangible and valuable way to show the fuck up. Like if 90% of portfolios are going to fail anyway, don't you want it to be in something that's like worth being a part of, that's a little bit more exciting? I think yes, but
words to live by. Gigi, Georgia Grace Edwards, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show and talking together here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a true pleasure.
Thanks for imbibing Open Container, a production of Rockfight LLC. Please take a second to follow our show on whatever podcast app you're listening to us on and send your emails and feedback to myrockfight@gmail.com. Check out Gnara by zipping over to Gnara.com. Our producers today were David Karstad and Colin True. Art direction provided by Sarah Gensert. I'm Doug Schnitzbahn. Get some. Thanks for listening.